Anyone who has ever seen Martin Scorsese's 1995 hit film Casino knows that Las Vegas was built by the Mafia. But few realize those formative years were also steered by a vastly different group with vastly different interests. Mormonism has deep roots in the city of Las Vegas. Mormons built the first settlements on the site and were largely responsible for creating its casino culture. Today, we're going to take a look at the untold story of how the Mormon Mafia built Las Vegas into what it is today. Founded on April 6, 1830 in the state of New York, what would eventually become known as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was originally called the Church of Christ. The teachings of the church were based on the Book of Mormon, which purported to be a chronicle of Jesus Christ's ministry in the Western Hemisphere. The contents of the book were alleged to be translated from a series of golden plates that Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, had discovered. Over the next decade, the church moved further west to avoid religious persecution, and in 1844, Joseph Smith was killed by a mob in Chicago. Leadership of the church was thereafter assumed by one of his underlings, Brigham Young. Following in Smith's footsteps, Young continued to move the church west, until in 1847, they finally settled in what would eventually become the state of Utah. By the 20th century, the Church of Latter-day Saints was growing into a massive international organization, with vast resources and real political power. The first permanent settlement in Las Vegas was erected by representatives of the Mormon Church. It was in 1855 that they were sent by church leader Brigham Young to establish an outpost halfway between the Mormon missions in San Bernardino and Southern California. The purpose of the outpost was mainly to store supplies, but while they were headed in that direction, these same representatives were asked to convert any Paiute Native Americans they happened to come across in the region. A fort was constructed, but despite the group's best efforts, the Mormons' first attempt to settle the region failed hard. Between crops that wouldn't grow and disagreements over group leadership, the settlement soon collapsed, and the Mormons abandoned the fort by 1857. They couldn't know it then, but the Mormons had actually planted the seeds for what would eventually grow into one of the 25 largest cities in the United States. The remains of that original fort still exist in the city, and can be seen today at the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Washington Avenue. In 1905, the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad bought up much of the property around the tiny town of Las Vegas. 110 acres of that land, adjacent to the Union Railroad, was then auctioned off. It's that parcel, which today sits in the downtown area, that formed the basis for what was eventually incorporated into the city of Las Vegas in 1911. Thanks to the railway, the rural settlement began to flourish, and Mormons returned to the region. They built homes in nearby Bunkerville, St. Thomas, Mesquite, and Overton, and eventually gravitated to Las Vegas as well. By 1930, Mormons comprised almost 10% of the population of Las Vegas. In 1954, the Mormon contingent was still relatively small, but the Mormon-dominated Continental Bank of Salt Lake City nonetheless decided to open the Bank of Las Vegas. E. Perry Thomas, a Mormon-connected financial manager employed by Continental in Utah, was sent to run the new institution. Thomas is noteworthy because he became the first banker to start lending money to the folks who would soon come to run the town with an iron fist: casino operators. Whether they were actually criminals or not, these operators had an unsavory reputation due to their connections with the traditionally organized crime-controlled area of gambling. When asked about the risks that came along with dealing with such clients, Thomas would simply respond that he was in the banking business, and regardless of what business they were in, the casino people were good loans. Thomas's decision led to a quick increase in the size and number of Las Vegas casinos. He also fought to change rules that prohibited corporate ownership of casinos, presumably because corporate borrowers were also good loans. This would also bring the casinos under the jurisdiction of the SEC, or Securities and Exchange Commission, which would effectively become overseers of the casino business. This would ensure that mobsters and organized crime types could no longer use casinos as fronts for laundering money. They say that in the 1940s and 50s, Las Vegas was run by the Mafia, and that is completely true. But in the 1960s, a new player came to town: Howard Hughes. Hughes was a celebrity businessman, film producer, and aviator. He was a titan of American industry, but towards the end of his life, he was also an increasingly unwell man, prone to extremely eccentric behavior. On Thanksgiving weekend in 1966, Hughes arrived in Las Vegas by train and took up residence at the Desert Inn. He stayed there for a month, never once leaving his room. Eventually, the owner of the hotel threatened to kick Hughes out. Hughes didn't want to leave, so he bought the hotel. That's the kind of thing you can do to end an argument when you're Howard Hughes. Needless to say, he continued to stay holed up on the hotel's top floor. After that, he started buying up Las Vegas casinos left and right, snatching them right out of the hands of the mob. However, since he never left the Desert Inn, he needed a team of executive assistants and advisors to oversee his business dealings. This team was led by a man named Frank Gay, who was curiously known as Bill. Gay was a Mormon that Hughes had hired right out of UCLA. Hughes preferred working with Mormons because he knew they didn't drink, smoke, or gamble. He thought this made them more likely to avoid being tempted by the vices of Vegas and handle his business with greater discretion and integrity. Hughes was so committed to using Mormons that they wound up composing the entirety of Gay's team. The group quickly became known around town as the Mormon Mafia. By the mid-1960s, Las Vegas was heavily influenced by people who were either members of or associated with various American mafias. While Mormon businessmen had been the ones to encourage the growth of the relatively shady gambling business, they were simultaneously concerned about what it was doing to the city's image. They eventually realized that the solution was to arrange for the mob-owned casinos to be purchased by someone with a more legitimate image, someone like Howard Hughes. Worried that if his involvement was generally known, he would get gouged on the purchase prices, Hughes' casino buying spree was ultimately enabled by E. Perry Thomas, who had posed as the buyer in Hughes' stead. His involvement remained a secret, and by the time that secret got out, the billionaire aviator already owned over a dozen properties in the town. In the late 1960s, future casino magnate Steve Wynn was a small-time investor in real estate and a minority owner of the Frontier Hotel. Wynn became a protege of E. Perry Thomas, who eventually helped him acquire his first big Las Vegas property, the downtown Golden Nugget Casino. Wynn had a knack for the casino business, and he would go on to acquire or build many of the city's most famous casinos, including Treasure Island, the Mirage, and the Bellagio. Even today, Steve Wynn remains one of the international gambling industry's most high-profile and successful figures. E. Perry Thomas's main job may have been to buy casinos on behalf of Howard Hughes, but that's not all he did. Thomas also spearheaded a change in Nevada state law that would allow corporations to own and operate casinos. Up until the 1960s, only individuals could be licensed to own or operate a casino. The law was intended to make it clear exactly who was responsible for the ownership and operation of the casino, theoretically making it much harder for criminals and other undesirables from getting a foothold in the industry. However, like a lot of things, this worked much better in theory than it did in reality. The mob was able to skirt the law by hiring clean frontmen who could conceal the operation's more sinister backers. Thomas realized that corporate ownership would not only greatly increase the growth of the city, it would bring with it the scrutiny of the Securities and Exchange Commission. This would act as an additional filter to underworld influence, and further bolster the image of Las Vegas as a legitimate tourist destination. Thomas turned out to be right on the money. The law had massive repercussions for the future of the city. As one historian put it, without it, Vegas would still be in the Dark Ages. If you know anything about Mormons, you know that they are traditionally opposed to what they perceive as sinful activities, like gambling. In their eyes, gambling is viewed as sinful because it's akin to acquiring money from someone without giving anything of value in return. Nonetheless, this outlook didn't stop the Mormons from helping turn Las Vegas into the largest gambling destination in the United States. In fact, many of them even work in casinos. How is this apparent contradiction resolved? Well, the church's stance seems to be pretty simple. Don't touch the dice. If you need even more proof of the Mormon Church's traditional power in Las Vegas, look no further than the local political scene. In 1940, Berkeley Bunker was appointed to the U.S. Senate to fill a vacancy left by the death of the former officeholder. Bunker, a native of Clark County, the county in which Las Vegas is situated, was the former Speaker of the Nevada State Assembly, as well as the first Mormon senator from Nevada. More recently, Democrat Harry Reid represented Nevada in Washington, D.C. However, Mormon politicians from Nevada tend to be conservative, and they tend to stay in office a long, long time.
Now let's jump right back into Romania, because I just need to know what's going on there. It seems like people are having a lot of fun. Who exactly is Tyler Boyer working with in Parliament in Romania? Why is the Black Sea rotational force coming from Reno, Nevada, by the way? In particular, that's where they were majority coming from. I think first we should back up and get you guys a little bit adjusted with some important Romanian history. So we reminded you yesterday that in 1989, when Dr. Jerry Franzfei is itching to get out there, the Berlin Wall came down. And with it, of course, what transpired was a lot of corruption. Rampant in the East, people going in there, plundering, taking what they wanted to, In Romania, that same year, on Christmas Day, I kid you not, there was something so dark about this having taken place on Christmas Day of 1989. The then president, Nicolae Ceausescu, and his wife, Elena Ceausescu, were actually ruthlessly murdered after a show trial. Just like the Nuremberg trials, if you actually go back, they were just show trials. Nobody actually was trying to figure out if there was guilt and present any evidence. It was like, you're already guilty. We're just going to shoot you and kill you. So this was supposed to be the end of communism. So the communist leaders had to go as well. And Nicolae and Elena were quite literally lined up and shot, and it was all filmed. And I'm not going to show you that shooting, obviously, but I am going to show you just a little snippet, historical snippet, so you can understand just how absurd the trial was and just how inhumane the verdict was. Take a listen.
The trial is brief and largely for show. It lasts about 2 hours and takes place without any real possibility for defence or appeal. Ceausescu himself refuses to recognise the court and calls it illegal. But it doesn't matter. The tribunal finds both him and Elena guilty. The sentence for both is death by firing squad, and the execution will happen immediately. Straight away, Nicolae tries to appeal the decision, but he's denied. Before being led out of the room, Nicolae turns to the guards and says he wants to be executed alongside Elena. They accept. Meanwhile, a soldier returns with rope to tie their hands, but neither Nicolae nor Elena wants to be restrained. Both argue with the soldiers, saying there's no need for it and that they're not going to run. But again, they're denied. They're then led out into the courtyard and placed against a wall to the barracks.
And you can fill in the blanks regarding what happens next. Now, you might be asking, why were they executed in this manner? You shouldn't ask those questions. This is how freedom is spread, okay? The West is the best. It's always kind of the same thing, right? Like, we show up and we say we're going to make things better because things are oppressive, and we always do make things better. We love a vacuum of power. No leadership. We killed Gaddafi. We arrested Nicolas Maduro, and in that vacuum of leadership, the oligarchs move in, they plunder, they steal, they take the oil. Did you see the headline, by the way, just honorably mentioning this after he gets arrested? It's like, Venezuela ships its first cart of oil over to Israel for the first time in X amount of years. Yeah, that's kind of the point. Oil, silver, gold, when a country is collapsed, especially artificially, it becomes the wild, wild west because at least temporarily there are no rules, right? So gangsters and banksters can move in, monopolize resources, and establish industries. Now, we are always told that whatever came before those oligarchs was desperation, that it was evil, sheer evil, much more evil than crony capitalism. Those are our two choices, by the way. You're either going to get communism or you're going to get crony capitalism. You're going to get crony capitalism and debt slavery, or you are going to get a government that has a bunch of power and people that are starving. There's nothing in between. It's the left versus the right, false dialectic. I think both options suck. And like I said, it is an intentional false dialectic, and the same people stay in power, getting us screaming at each other. Anyway, Romania in particular. Under the communist rule in Romania, Nicolae had banned abortion. He had eliminated private and foreign usury. He even banned gambling, referring to it as a Western decadence. I mean, could you imagine a world without the freedom to gamble? Terrible, just terrible. The West is the best. We're going in there. Sometimes we have to get in there and spread that kind of democracy, and of course, deliver these people slot machines. Yeah, no. On January 1st, 2007, 8 years after Elena and Nicolae were shot, Romania officially joined the EU alongside Bulgaria. Okay. Now, if you have ever wondered or tried to make sense of what the European Union is, it's basically a bureaucracy that sits on top of another bureaucracy. Like, if you're a citizen of Europe, not only are you subject to your own country's laws, but then there's also another body that sits in Brussels that can tell your country what it can or cannot do. It sits above your country laws. So imagine, for Americans, we elect representatives to go down to DC and to make and pass laws. Imagine they do that, and then there's just this outside bureau up in Canada that says, that's a nice law, but that doesn't actually work for us because we have our own laws. And no, that's kind of the EU in a nutshell. Unbelievably corrupt, deals done in back rooms, the same thing everywhere. Anyway, in 2009, just 2 years later, after they joined the EU, the Romanian parliament passes a law to regulate gambling, okay? They decide you will now need a license to operate a casino, which basically means you have to spend a lot of money to get this license, to become a licensed operator of casinos. In short, that's kind of crony capitalism, right? Only rich people are going to even be able to afford this thing. And so we'll do these deals, and poor people, now you can't get into this industry. But also in that same order, they did criminalize online gambling. So essentially what happens next is the EU Commission gets involved, and the EU Commission says, actually it doesn't work for us. This is in 2009. And we want to edit this and allow online gambling. We still want online gambling to happen. I want you to keep in mind, in 2009 and 2010, when this is all going down, the United States announces, hey, we're going to put a military base out in Romania. It's interesting timing, right? So we, at the same exact time that this gambling thing, kind of a monopoly, is going to get settled in Romania for rich people, America says in 2009 that we are going to officially set up a base. So now we are in 2010, and the EU forces that online gambling restrictions are removed as well. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying here, but that's effectively what took place. And we know that in 2010, the Black Sea Rotational Force arrives, and so does Tyler Boyer. Tyler Boyer makes his first appearance in Romania at the same time in 2010. And I will also remind you again that in 2010, Lori Franzfei reinstates AZ Tech International. What does it do? Actually, we were able to finally find a description of what AZ Tech International does from Lori. It was up on the Everyday Heroes website. She had a bio that has since been pulled down, but they go into detail regarding what AZ Tech does, and I want you to follow along with me. We'll read this together, okay? I'm going to read that second paragraph. It says that Lori, for the past 12 years of her career, has been focused in the pioneering research and development on disruptive cyber technologies for applications in relationship to the way humans think and the importance of assessing what happens if type technologies, truly addressing the humanitarian side of the equation. AZ Tech, a science and engineering environment, it's an environment, has been at the pinnacle of creating a hybrid cyber, electrical, mechanical capability to address life sustainability and mitigation strategies in the event there is partial to complete shutdown of power. This has led her and her incredible engineering team to create multiple patents in the predictability and cyber analytic area in support of the Department of Defense, the DOE, and state government relative to sustainability of critical infrastructure protection. Blah, 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 supercalifragilistic, big word, sustainability, big word, sustainability, vocabulary word, ta-da, technology, tech. It's so high tech. You have to have a highly technical BS mind to think that that makes any sense. Like I said, these people are not smarter than you that rule over than us. They're just more corrupt. But that's absurd. It's just a word pretzel. We're in a pretzel. She's saying a lot of words, and she keeps throwing in sustainability in the middle. It's like sustainability, sustainable functional way to monitor the sustainable functional technologies and working with the Department of Defense to do the supercalifragilistic things. Okay, Lori. Okay. Love to interview her or Erica to deeply understand it. I just want to get real cerebral with them, Explain it to me like I'm 2. I call 2014 the year of fake it till you make it. Okay, so we are going to learn that Erica is living in Venice, California, and there's actually no purpose for her to be doing that unless we look through her actions, and it's very clear she's trying to make it in Hollywood. Now, there is a clip of her sitting down with her best friend, Tracy Martin, on a talk show. Something that I noted that is interesting is a woman named Diane Burnett likes the post. And that is, in fact, Mark Burnett's wife, okay? Mark Burnett being the person who created Survivor, the person who's going to create the reality show that Erica is on, the person that's also running Donald Trump's show that he was on, The Apprentice. Like, he's the creator of so much reality TV. And so there's an indication here that, again, we're going to see all of these paths crossing because it's also the year that Johnny Moore is going to leave Liberty University and start the Kairos company with Andrew. Johnny Moore is working for Mark Burnett. There is a chance that in 2014, again, Erica and Andrew Colvett would have crossed paths. That would make sense. They know the same people. More relevant, however, is Lori Franzwe, because she gets introduced on the floor in Arizona, on the congressional floor, because she has David Farnsworth sponsoring a bill. She's doing this panic stuff. There could be an EMP event, and we have to get prepared for an EMP event that could happen, electromagnetic pulses. And here is what me and my husband, Larry Ginta, recommend that you do. And it's G-Tech Industries. I think she's a used car salesman. I'm going to be honest with you. It seems like, to me, when I observe everything, it's a group of people working together to get money from the government, and they all know each other. And so Lori is introduced by Terrell Farnsworth's family. Terrell Farnsworth, the guy that takes down the cameras. This is his family. He, like I told you in previous episodes, grew up with Tyler Boyer. Their families have been friends, Mormon families, for generations. Okay, it's like they all know each other, and they're just like, we got to get this money. Okay, you're going to pretend like you're a tech genius, Lori. And she's like, sustainability. I love sustainability, and words. And you're going to present, and I'm going to put together a vote, and the Farnsworths are going to vote, and we're going to get this money, honey. That's Lori to me. Lori gives me scam artist. I got to say it. I'm on one. Everything about her, I'm seeing a scammer on the corner trying to sell me CDs, you know? Like, they're just outside, they got a black plastic bag, and they're like, oh, let me sell you these DVDs, you know? They come into the hair salon, they're selling you bootleg DVDs. That's Lori in the story. She's bootlegging. And she has actual people that are working, the Farnsworth family that's helping her do that. And that is why Eddie Farnsworth, who also votes to pass her resolution and also is of Terrell Farnsworth's family, camera guy, that's why he's going to get accused in the future. He makes tens of millions of dollars off of charter schools. There are all these articles. Look up Eddie Farnsworth and the charter school, and they all started saying, hey, he's scamming, he's taking all this government money. Like, this seems like their true family business. Make up something that you do, say it's important, get a bunch of money from the Department of Homeland Security, from the DOD, but in reality, it's like a political mafia working together to scam taxpayers. That's what he gets accused of, Eddie Farnsworth. That's what you got accused of. There's tons of articles. And crucially, the Boyers, the Farnsworth, the Franzwes, the Colvetts, they're all just vibing around each other at all times. And what happens crucially is that Tyler Boyer is going to meet Charlie Kirk this year. It is still not clear to me how they met, but we can state that Tyler is the chairman at that time of the Maricopa County Republican Committee, and Eddie Farnsworth is on that committee, and David Farnsworth is on that committee. So here is Eddie Farnsworth on that committee, and yeah, you got the Farnsworth clan again. They grew up together. They're all Chandler, Arizona, went to the same high schools. Your mom, my dad. It's giving Mormon Mafia, okay? And look up the Farnsworth family. They're a very powerful family in Mormon world. Roots down into Mexico. They've been around since day one of the LDS Mormon Church. I know that some people say it's now LDS. Forgive me for not being brushed up on that.